Hi, my name is Maya. I'm a pelvic floor physiotherapist at Urban Wellness, and today we're going to go over the basics of the pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor is a system of muscles at the bottom of your pelvis, or the floor. When we look at them from the bottom, we kind of see they run from the pubic bone to the tailbone, and the sits bone to the sits bone. And they make a little bit of a diamond at the bottom of our pelvis, and I like to think of there as being a front triangle of that diamond and a back. So in front, we have our clitoris, urethral opening, and vaginal opening, and in back, we have the anal opening and rectum, and we have our deeper hip stabilizers down here. When we look from the top down, we see all of these muscles attaching kind of around this ring of the pelvis, and together they all kind of make a little bowl. And within that bowl are our organs. So our bladder would be in front, uterus in behind, and rectum in behind that. And together they kind of all sit within it. Now, when we think about those pelvic floor muscles being muscles, they have a job. So they contract, they relax, and the way we think about pelvic floor function is associated with our breathing and pressure management. So in our lungs, and when we inhale and exhale, we have a muscle at the very bottom of our lungs, our diaphragm. When we inhale deeply, our diaphragm descends, our belly inflates, our ribs inflate, and that descent causes some pressure to develop in our intra-abdominal cavity, or kind of that space where our organs are. So that descending diaphragm is going to send the pressure down, and we have our pelvic floor right below that. So as we take that big breath in, the pelvic floor is supposed to descend to some degree to absorb some of that pressure. And then as we exhale, the pelvic floor should kind of reflexively engage and lift, again to maintain that pressure. So we inhale, relax, exhale, contract, and that kind of happens subtly as we inhale and exhale to maintain pressure in the abdomen. When we become pregnant, there's lots of changes that occur at the pelvic floor. So one, we have new pressure, new heaviness, new weight that this trampoline pelvic floor has to absorb. And so if we kind of imagine throwing a bowling ball on a trampoline, we can imagine that our trampoline would have to do more things to maintain its elasticity. We can also imagine that our posture is going to change. So the relative way that we're standing might get altered, the actual positioning of our pelvis bones might change, and all of those changes require some training at the pelvic floor to help us maintain function throughout pregnancy. Now, like any muscle, we can be weak, we can be strong, we can be tight, or we can be loose. And the status of your pelvic floor could be very different than another person who's pregnant. In general, the research suggests that having a really strong pelvic floor is helpful for pregnancy, both during pregnancy and postpartum. However, we do want to think about how do we get strength if we're on the tighter skew. So if you're someone who tends to hold a lot of tension, we want to think about being able to move the pelvic floor through its entire range of motion. So for people who tend to be tighter, I like to use my bicep as an example. We should have a nice kind of relaxed bicep. But some people at baseline might feel they're a little bit tighter, so they're not really able to explore their full range of motion. And so for some people, what they have to do before they do the strengthening piece of pelvic floor training is they actually have to lengthen their pelvic floor so they can kind of get that full range. So during pregnancy, regardless of kind of the status of your pelvic floor, it's important to do some training, but what you specifically do would be dependent on your body. And it's a good idea to see a pelvic floor physio near you or just get a consultation to understand what might be most appropriate for you throughout the entirety of your pregnancy. Things change. Maybe at one moment you're really good and strong. Maybe as your body adapts, maybe you need to focus on lengthening. And so that continuity is really impactful.